Hi, I'm George and I'm delighted to present our paper titled It's Freedom to Put Things Where My Mind Wants, Understanding and Improving the User Experience of Structuring Data in Spreadsheets. The flexibility and ease of use of spreadsheets have made them a global commercial success, but also extremely error-prone. Approaches that introduce formal structures into spreadsheets to prevent errors reduce the flexibility of the grid, but the reasons for their limited uptake have not been well studied. Previous studies have made relevant observations, but have not yet mapped out the wide set of constraints and influences on spreadsheet data structures that are encountered by users of different levels of expertise and different domains. To address this, we studied the data structuring experiences of a diverse sample of 21 spreadsheet users. Studies of spreadsheet use found that nearly all spreadsheets in work environments were built collaboratively by co-workers of different levels of expertise. The flexibility of spreadsheets led to concerns of spreadsheet risks and errors. Several studies have investigated how data workers capture, analyze, process, and maintain data in work environments. Spreadsheets are widely used for data entry, storage, structuring, annotation, analysis, and reporting. Others have investigated facets of data work, such as electronic data capturing and data discovery. Moreover, spreadsheet data arrangement practices are largely ad hoc and suffer from inadequate tool support, cultural resistance, and limited user expertise. Users commit considerable management effort to locating different sources of data, reconciling differences, and arranging data for sharing. A study of spreadsheet users found that 90% of users don't follow any written guidelines. Furthermore, spreadsheet errors can be mitigated through auditing and testing tools, enhancement to the formula language, and grid structure alterations. These alterations suggest alternatives to the two-dimensional spreadsheet grid to deal with errors. We conducted two studies. First, a semi-structured contextual interviews with 21 users, exploring how users experience structuring data in spreadsheets, their needs, constraints, and pain points. Second, a scenario-based interview with 20 participants from Study 1, using click-through prototypes of spreadsheet error features aimed to address needs identified in Study 1. The objective of the second study is to determine whether improving the value of proposition of formally structured data can reduce or eliminate the need for a flexible two-dimensional grid. We sent targeted emails and advertisements to mailing lists and social media. Interested participants were directed to a screening questionnaire containing questions about gender, age, and use of spreadsheets. We asked participants to specify which spreadsheet software they use. We received 91 responses to the screening form. Of these, we selected a sample of 21 users across domains and levels of expertise who were willing to walk us through their spreadsheets. We interviewed 15 men, 6 women. 18 participants were between 18 and 34 years old, 2 between 35 and 44, and 1 between 45 and 54. 13 participants were employed, 6 were university students, and 2 were self-employed. Microsoft Excel was the most used spreadsheet, followed by Google Sheets and Apple Numbers. 10 participants used multiple spreadsheet software, while other participants exclusively used Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets, and Apple Numbers. In the first study, we explored the factors that influence users' choices for structuring data in spreadsheets. Using screen sharing, we asked them to walk us through their own spreadsheets, their goals, and structuring experiences. Our interviews covered how users structured data, factors affecting structure, and pain points experienced when structuring data and their use of formal structures. We discovered that the user's choice of a certain level and type of structure is subject to numerous tensions that the user must resolve, to varying degrees of success, to arrive at a satisfactory solution. We found 4 major factors that caused users to engage in intentional data structuring activities, such as spreadsheet features which benefited from or required a particular structure, influences from auxiliary tools, the need of audience of collaborator, and the desire for error prevention. In many cases, despite desiring and understanding the benefit of structured data, users experienced barriers to structuring data. Most participants reported advantages to unstructured data, improving comprehension, providing flexibility and control, enabling easier learning, and editing and facilitating collaborations. Despite the benefits, participants experienced several limitations when using unstructured data. Unstructured data was difficult to use with tools such as charts, sorting, filtering, pivot tables, and formulas. In the second study, We explored whether augmenting formal spreadsheet tables with affordances that were sensitive to the barriers and constraints to unstructured data experienced by end users could meaningfully change the value proposition of formal structures in spreadsheets and motivate more people to use them. We conducted scenario-based interviews with 20 participants, wherein they were shown material that helped them understand a future design scenario and invited them to reflect on them, a method previously applied for understanding proposed spreadsheet feature. We identified 4 common operations to be built into table columns and created click-through prototypes for each. All participants found the column value grouping features to be useful and usable, and most found conditional formatting and data validation features useful. 2 participants did not find any feature useful. While the perceived utility of column operations is interesting, their evaluation was not the intent of the study. Our focus was on participants' attitudes towards the table opinionation scenarios, which directly informed us about the comparative utility of structured tables versus the unstructured grid. We recorded user attitudes to each opinionation scenario. Presenting the scenarios prompted many participants to discuss their preference for working with tabular data within the formalized structures provided by the application as compared to outside such structures. While some participants favored exclusively using the grid, the majority insisted that both forms of data management are necessary and have their own value. Our study shows that structure cannot exist in isolation. Structure is a task-dependent, dynamic, and continuous. The user's experience of structure, as we observed, is always with respect to an operation. There is no such thing as structured or unstructured data in any absolute sense. Further, our study has 2 interesting applications. One is that data structuring features in spreadsheets might better align with users' workflows if they had incremental constraint and benefits and could be composed with each other. Another implication is that no single structure is appropriate in all situations for all users. To the contrary, every structure in a spreadsheet is likely to be inappropriate for many user operations over the lifetime of the spreadsheet. One motivating question for this research into novel spreadsheet structures, namely whether a suitable data structure exists that fits the needs of spreadsheet users to such extent that it could replace the unstructured grid and all error proneness involved in its use. Our findings here suggest that in fact no such structure exists due to the dynamic and contextual nature of user needs that have not previously been documented in detail. Future work may study in greater detail how these effects vary across different segments of the user population, as well as techniques that may infer the user context and suggest appropriate level of structure. Further studies may also explore in greater detail the nature of collaborative tasks around spreadsheets and the interplay between novice and expert users. Thank you for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.